What will the felon's funeral look like? Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you for liking, watching, commenting on the videos, sharing the videos, posting the videos on your social media platform. It's all greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, when I was scrying this morning, I kept getting images of uh, the felon being ill. This isn't uncommon. This has been going on for several months. Uh, but today I was shown more images of his funeral. We've talked a little bit about this, that there'll be large um, celebrations in the street, that there'll be, that the funeral, that he'll unfortunately be given a state funeral. Um, the casket will be in the rotunda of the Capitol. Um, And some of the images that I shown were a little bit new. Um, I got a better look at the protests outside of the Capitol, and they were large, and people were holding signs like MAGA is next, and good riddance, and uh, bye bye. Um, then I also heard a voice. I'm not sure if it was Nancy Pelosi or maybe Hillary Clinton, but it was a female voice, and it just simply said, "The world is a safer place today, and the people outside marching know it." Then in the cathedral, which I think is done against the will of a lot of the people at the Washington Cathedral, um, world leaders were gathered, but most of them were like jubilant and laughing as if it were like just a normal day, as if it were a party. Um, People were singing in the streets. Saw an airplane flying with banners saying, "God saved America. Now we have to save ourselves from Republicans." Um, the Pope, saw the Pope. It looked like he was holding some sort of prayer vigil for like a return to hope. It was a very hopeful feel to his message. I didn't actually hear anything, but it's just what it felt like. Again, there are millions of people in the streets, um, uh, small towns, even parades of tractors, farmers celebrating as well. Um, the baby Trump balloon was on display in the streets, and it looked like it sent a very clear message to MAGA Republicans that the country isn't with you, and the world definitely isn't with you. Um, so I guess the questions I want to look at is how will the world leaders react when he passes and at his funeral? How will Vance respond to the people marching in the streets? Um, what will be the state of American democracy when this happens? And will things after the funeral and things calm down, will things be less insane? Will things be more predictable? So let's look at those questions. Let's start with the world leaders, and then we'll just go in the order that I read them, I think. Okay, so how will world leaders react to the death of the felon? How will world leaders react to the death of the felon? Just keep seeing the three cups in the water, circles of support and celebration. I don't think there's going to be much love loss here. I think they'll be, diplomatic. I don't think they'll be um, encouraging marching in the streets, but I also don't think they'll discourage it. I do think the marching in the street will take a lot of American politicians by surprise. This is something that I don't think they would be expecting, at least the large amount of it, because it seems like it's overwhelmingly denying or deniable what message is being sent. And that is, thank goodness he's gone. So, um, yeah, how will world leaders react? So you see the president of Mexico and Prime Minister Carney of Canada um, talking to each other, sharing a laugh, a smile, along with Macron from France. How will they react? It almost feels like just a huge sigh of relief that while policies might not shift that much, at least the person that they're speaking to is more likely than not going to stick with the same point, whether good or bad. I think they view this as a strengthening of their relationships with the United States. Uh, I don't think that they'll be overly excited about Vance being president, but I do they think that this will it feels like they think this will be like much easier to have an adult conversation. I don't think they trust Vance, by the way. I definitely get a feeling of distrust, but um, yeah, I think juggling money, overseas affairs, there'll be a lot of renegotiating trade. I think that'll be their top priority. I think they'll view it as moving away from the trouble that the felon has caused in the world as well. I think this eases a lot of tensions globally. Um, I think countries feel like they don't have to, like, they'll be able to speak their mind without having to worry about what's going to happen. For example, recognizing Palestine is suddenly punishable in the United States if countries decide to recognize Palestine. I think like those type of fears will be lessened. Um, yeah, it's inevitable. Travel will pick up again. Um, I think, I just think the whole world takes this collective exhale. I don't think anybody thinks that the fight is over, but I think there's this exhale of, at least there's not this person with dementia that, running things, just instead just a crazy narcissist that's, selfish and is running the place. But that's better than demented. So I do think in that sense it's better. Yeah, lots of celebrations behind the scenes. Yeah, it's people are going to be happy. We do have fighting in the environment around, but I think this is just more of the supporters of the felon realizing how much in the minority they really are at this point. And it's going to get more and more. They're already in the minority, but they're going to be really in the minority by the time this happens in a few months, something like that. Um, I think this feeling of being confined with the Eight of Swords is what they're moving away from towards uh, calmer waters, more moderation. Of course, temperance is the card after death as well. So I think, they're hopeful that the world will moderate itself a little bit. and lots of celebrations with the Four of Wands. So, you know, I think they think this improves their position in the world with the United States. I think their celebrations all around the world, including world leaders, will be happy to see him go. I think currently they're feeling quite confined, and then all of a sudden it's this release. And then it's like, okay, we're free to set sail. We're free to move about. Um, I do think there'll be attempts to renegotiate trade. I don't know if they'll be successful, but they'll at least be in mostly in good faith. They won't be, tariffs announced out of the blue. It won't be like that. I do think world travel picks up. I do think there'll be a lot of sore losers, shall we say, in response to the celebrations at first. But after that, I think it's a tempered moment, and people are adjusting to life after he's gone and looking forward to it. So I do think it's quite the celebration. I think people are really surprised by how much of the burdens are relieved when he goes and how much more they'll be able to isolate Russia. Um, and also the world will feel more nurtured with the Empress. So I think that'll feel pretty good. The question is, how does Vance respond? Like seeing all these people celebrating the death of um, the felon, how does Vance respond to the people? So initially, I think it's quite harsh. I think he doesn't quite realize the scale, and I think he addresses the country the day of the death and says something like, people really shouldn't be celebrating this. This is a sad situation, yada, yada, yada. And then more people come out and celebrate just to like spit in his face, so to speak. And it just feels like Vance is completely beside himself. It's like, I think he knows that the felon is hated. I just don't think he knows that the extent of the hate now that crazier things have gone on. Um, in particular with the budget bill, tariffs, trade, not being able to get good produce in the country anymore. Um, so how will Vance look at these celebrations? He either folds to them or it emboldens him. But I don't think it emboldens him because I think he immediately starts thinking about running for president. Um, so I think he thinks of a way to he just immediately he's just such an opportunist. His energy is slimy. He's a chameleon. It's just that's an insult to chameleons, but he'll just take whatever shape he thinks is most beneficial to him. So I don't think he'll by any means condone the celebrations or anything like that, but I think he'll take note of them. But let's see, how will he handle these celebrations? How will he handle these? I think he definitely sees this as an opportunity. I don't think he'll feel sad, or might feel a little bit of regret, but not sad. I think he immediately distances himself from the felon. Yeah, the Eight of Cups. He walks away. Um, Now he does it politically because, like I said, he's slimy, right? So he's gonna try to make MAGA think that he's on their side. And he's gonna try to make more moderate people think that he's, opposed some of the felon's stuff. But we'll still know the truth. Like he's not gonna be able to fool anybody because he just doesn't have that cult like attraction that the felon has, right? He just doesn't. Um, We get the Knight of Wands. I think he'll see these marches, these celebrations as delivering a fiery message, and that's exactly what they'll be intended to do, is to tell him we want to change course. And I think that's kind of exactly what happens. We get the tower in the upper right. We'll have to go a little bit further to know exactly what this means, but it does feel like this is just like a tearing down of the MAGA platform, like, you know, starting to treat seniors with respect, um, maybe, having more due process with respect to the law. Yeah. The Hanged Man. Now, it takes a while for him to come around, so it's not immediate that he like realizes this. Well, no, I think he realizes it immediately. Let me restate that. I don't think he acts immediately. I think he tries to fill it out to see if it goes away. But we're not talking about one day of marching in the street and celebrating, right? We're talking about weeks of celebrations. We're talking about just massive, massive celebrations. We get the greedy merchant at the center of the reading, along with wish fulfillment. Either way we take it, I think it's fitting. I think a lot of people get their wish fulfilled, and then I think we get the greedy people trying to immediately get into Vance's ear. I don't think it works, by the way. I know a lot of people will argue with me on this, but I just have never seen them having that much influence over him because, once he's president, he has no use for them. He just doesn't. The Republican Party will raise money for him. He doesn't need them anymore. So um, I just don't see it myself. Uh, we get the Knight of Pentacles. I think he definitely sees this as a message, and a surprising new beginning. I don't think he really understands the extent of how mad people are currently and the amount of tension that has been building up. And we get the Four of Swords as well, ill health, not being able to sleep, um, really kind of overwhelmed by everything that's going on, will be the initial reaction. And we get the Seven of Swords, this deception, mis and disinformation. I think he'll continue to toe the line for a while about the felon's health and how he didn't know anything about it. But I think that changes eventually. So I think he starts to distance himself, but does it in a slimy, sneaky way to where he can keep the greedy people on his side, but also try to get more moderate people. But his deceit and his deception is just a little bit more juvenile than the felon. Not juvenile in like the words or anything, because nobody can be more juvenile than the felon in that way, just in its effectiveness. And I think that's kind of the image here of the young person on the witness stand kind of says it all. It's like, he'll lie, but well, everybody will be able to see through his lies. This will be a surprising new beginning. And the greed is part of what starts to get torn down. That's what starts to get removed slightly from the government. Now, I'm not uh, being overly optimistic here because I'm not saying that all of a sudden, JD Vance is a liberal Democrat and, is pushing for health care for everybody and expanding Social Security and Medicare. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying he's going to be an opportunist and he's going to see where the wind is blowing. And they'll have polling as well. That's why Republicans are so scared now about the midterms, is because the polling shows that they're in big trouble. I think Vance will take it for the fiery message that it is. I do think it takes him a while to absorb that. I think, he's got to recalibrate and rethink, rest, recuperate. And then I think he comes out with some messages around money that looks like it's going to help people, but it's all for show. But nobody's going to believe him because he's the snake, but his lies are like, a 6-year-old lying to you. You just know when they're lying. Um, We get the Two of Swords. I think he thinks he's playing chess, but the rest of us know he's just who he is. And this is, um, he sees this as a wish fulfilled, but the rest of us see this as protection. The felon's passing, that is not Vance's presidency. And then I think he'll be very isolated and alone with the hermit card. And I think there'll be lots of Republicans working against him succeeding because Republicans are going to want to run in 28. And if they could get him to be vulnerable, they'll primary him. Um, so lots of anxiety and knowing that the world is watching, but at the same time, he brings some stability with the Four of Pentacles. Not not in a difference of governance, but just in a predictability about how bad the governance will be. That's where the stability comes from. Okay, so what's going to be the state of democracy at the point that this happens? What would be the state of democracy at this point? Let me just state of democracy. I mean, just getting the image of, um, like a paper heart, how kids cut out for like Valentine's Day. And it's like it's torn, but then it's like there's kind of this scotch tape to the side. So I think it'll be broken, but I think it'll be repairable. Um, let's see. What will be the state of democracy in the United States? Yeah, I think it'll be walking away from what was, which was the way the felon was going. So it'll be an improvement. It'll start to improve. I think we might be pleasantly surprised about how resilient it turns out to be with the king of, or the page of cups there. We get the six of cups. I think ideas start to be exchanged again. And this is like probably the thing that the felon has done the most harm in doing is Republicans and Democrats don't exchange ideas anymore. Now, I think that's fine if you're a Democrat who wants to talk to the MAGA Republicans. But the MAGA Republicans, I think, would like to talk to the Democrats. Well, maybe not the MAGA ones, but I think there would be more interaction if the felon wasn't so, it's us against them all the time, rather than we're both on the same team. I think that switches a little bit as well. I think there'll be a lot of guardrails put up defending um, some of the institutions. I do think Vance fires a bunch of people like Cash Patel and Pam Bondi. I think they're gone. We can look more at that as things get closer. And we get the Sun card. Like there's hope. Like it'll be repairable for sure. And stability in the environment around with the Four of Pentacles. And strength. Strength through calmness, right? That's what the strength card's really about in the tarot. It's not like an aggressive strength, right? She's petting the lion. She's not, got a shot collar on the lion. So it's strength through diplomacy. I do think the United States is still isolated a little bit. I don't think that goes away soon. I think that takes some years, but I think the talks start to happen. Um, and democracy setting here as the Pentacle, the Queen of Pentacles. And it's okay. It's not in the best of shape, but it's okay. The country will move away from this felons kind of us against them type attitude. all things will be revealed, and democracy will be again the goal of everyone. And strength through diplomacy. And I think we'll start to see the exchange of ideas the way democracy is supposed to work. And this us against them, it's not that it goes away. It's not that, all of a sudden there's not this huge political divide in the country. It's just more that there's not such a demonization if the two sides do something together. So I think we'll be pleasantly surprised by how stable it is. I think the United States will still be on the defense in the world stage and still be isolated and be alone with the hermit card. But I do think that those relationships can be improved. There'll be things behind the scenes that we can't see. There'll be part of the country that is heartbroken. This is the way it's always going to be. But we're moving away from the trouble with the Six of Swords. We're moving away from the deceit and the deception. That's what we're moving away from. And it completes this cycle. And it's sort of like a whole new cycle begins that is based a little bit less on deceit and more on trying to accomplish things. Now, whether we agree with what they're trying to accomplish or not is a completely different story, but that will be the goal. Okay, so will this leave things less insane? What will the energies around the world be? Just maybe 3 cards here. I don't think we need to do a full spread. What will be the energies around the world after this event takes place? We'll see. I don't think we'll do a full spread, but maybe. What will be the energies around the world? Yeah, it's just it feels just one of like, disagreement without raising your voice. This feels more sane. Now, again, I'm not saying Vance is going to be a good president. I don't think that's the case at all. I just think that it'll be predictable, and predictability is better than crazy and unpredictable. Crazy, predictable, crazy, unpredictable. I don't know. I think crazy predictable is a little bit easier to deal with. I think the world will be on a healing path. The Empress card, the nurturing part of it. And I think there'll be a lot of work going on behind the scenes that we don't see or hear about until it comes to fruition. Rather than bragging about what deal might get done, the deals will just be getting done and then they'll be talked about. And here's the 3 of Cups that I was seeing with the world leaders, the circles of support and celebration. I do think, it's a very healing energy. Maybe just one more card here. Yeah, the world starts to move forward, and yeah, reunions and celebrations, like things just get better. Underneath, it's we get a start over. It's like a do-over. Now, that doesn't mean everything changes for the better overnight, not in the least, but it does mean that the opportunity is there. And I do think, Vance is slimy and squirmy, but he's going to do whatever he can do to stay as president in a legal way, not in an illegal way. He's not like the felon in that sense. Um, so, yeah, anyhow, well, thanks for watching. I'll be back with another video soon.